Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we're looking at S East genug, which translates to "it is enough." Now, this is a very fascinating chorale. Lots of chromatic movement, and there is one phrase in here that I honestly don't know how to make sense of it, to be honest. I have a theory, but it's not perfect, but we could talk about it when we get there. This chorale is all over the place. I think if we think about the title, "It Is Enough," this is a very evocative, very emotional chorale with a lot of forced harmonic perspectives. We even have some modality in here as well. This is a very active chorale. So let's hop right into it. So 3 sharps in the key signature. We start with A major, we end with A major. I'm going to go ahead and hedge my bets and say that we're in the key of A major. However, we have this interesting chord here. We have B sharp, F sharp, G sharp, and D sharp. That's a G sharp 7 chord. That would be the dominant of C sharp, which makes me think that this is a half cadence in the key of C sharp minor. So even though we start off with a 1 chord in the key of A, and then we get ready for what would appear to be a C sharp minor-ish cadence, we have G sharp, B, E, and B. That would be 5-6 in the key of A major, but in the key of C sharp minor, that would be 3-6. And that goes to A sharp, F sharp, D, and C sharp. However, I think this D is an accented non-chord tone, and really what we're looking at is C sharp, A sharp, and F sharp. That would be F sharp major in first inversion, which would be a 4-6 chord. And we see that Bach uses a lot of major 4 in minor keys. And then we get this G sharp 7 chord in first inversion, which would be 5-6-5. And the reason why this, it's such a short phrase, and modulations over short phrases can be kind of difficult. It's the same way that Bach sort of forces a perspective here. We have like an A Lydian fragment in the melody, but we have this idea of A still being kind of the tonic here, and then this D sharp being recontextualized in a very interesting way. But if we look ahead, we have an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of E, and pretty much for the rest of the chorale, we get E as our primary key. Even though A gets injected in certain places, we're thinking in terms of E, which is the dominant of A anyways. So we get G sharp, B sharp, G sharp, and D sharp, which is just G sharp major in root position, so we could just change the figured bass. And that goes to C sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and E natural, which is our tonic triad in the key of C sharp minor. And I said this is an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of E major. I meant to say A major, sorry. I was just thinking in E major because that's what's happening after the fact. I just misread my notes. Yes, so this is actually going to be our pivot back to the key of A major as our mediant, our 3 chord. We have even though we have a D sharp here, it's still sort of, that's where I'm saying that our pivot is happening. We get the B natural against that D sharp, which has kind of an interesting sound against this E and G sharp here, but we have some passing tones going on. We have another passing tone there. The A is not quite a chord tone yet. But then we get G sharp, E, G sharp, and B, which is E major over G sharp. That's 5-6. Passing tone in the bass. Then we get E, E, and we also have this delayed neighbor tone here. We have E, E, G sharp, and B, which is just a root position 5 chord. Again, 5 in first inversion going to 5 in root position. We have some passing tone. We have a passing tone and a neighbor tone. And then we have C sharp, E, B, and C sharp, E, G sharp, and D natural. However, I think based on the pitch collection that we have here, I think this C sharp is an accented non-chord tone, and really we're looking at B, E, E, and D, and then this G sharp is also part of the figure, so I think really this is a 5-7 chord in second inversion, so 5-4-3, and then we cadence on A major. And actually, because we don't need to reiterate the Roman numeral, we could just put 4-3 here, and then we cadence on A, E, A, and C sharp, A major in root position. Okay, looking ahead, we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of E major, so introducing the idea of E major now with this D sharp as part of the melody. We have this juxtaposition of D sharp here and then D natural falling down to C sharp sort of instantiating the idea of A major again. But now we get D sharp up here in the melody, so I think we modulate straight away. This A could be our common chord. It's now, sorry, not 5, but 4 in the key of E major. And then we have E, G sharp, and B. Root position E major triad, A, E, A, and C sharp, which is an A major triad in root position. We have F sharp passing tone here. We have B natural, and we have D sharp, and that's kind of like a 5-4-2 chord, right? Because it's like a B7 over A. So we can say that that's happening in passing. And then it doesn't quite go to 1-6. It's more of just like a brief moment of that chord happening. But then we get A sharp, G natural, C sharp, and E. And that is A sharp fully diminished in root position, which would be 7-7 of 5, because A sharp is the leading tone to B, and B is our dominant. And then instead of going directly to B, we get B, F sharp, B, and E. So we almost get the makings of a B chord, but we have this 4-3 suspension between the melody and the bass, which is our 5 chord that resolves on the next beat, turning it into 5-7, with this little neighbor tone here in the alto before we cadence on E major, E, B, G sharp, and E. So already we have some interesting stuff going on here. We have this interesting half cadence at the beginning, and the first perfect authentic cadence we're getting is in the key of the dominant. And then we get a similar iteration to the previous 3 phrases, at least in terms of their proportion and what keys they visit. But we get another interesting cadence here, which I think is, it's going to be weird, but this is a half cadence in the key of E. Not really E major, it's actually more E minor than E major, but we'll talk about it. So we have A, E, and A. Sorry, something went wrong there. A, C sharp, E, and A. And I think we go to E minor via A again, because this feels like a 5 going to a 1, because that's effectively what's happening in the key of A. And then we get the same sort of thing happening here as if it were the beginning of the piece. G sharp, B, E, and B, a 5-6 chord, E major. And I think if we're thinking in terms of the key of E, if not E minor, E major, maybe we can do something like this where we have E/E, because I'm uncertain as to whether or not we are thinking in terms of E major, E minor, because we have G sharp going to G natural, going to F sharp. And if we looked at the bass purely, this descending chromatic bass line is a theme that, or the ascending or descending chromaticism is going to be a theme that we see throughout, right? Like we have here, like we have here, and we're going to see it in all the voices really except for the melody. So we can call this chord our tonic in first inversion, but this playing between major and minor tonics is very unusual. But afterwards we get G natural, A, E, and C sharp, and if we were in the key of A still, I would call this 5-4-2 of 4. And if we look at the lower voices, we have the making of the D major triad, right? We have the F sharp and the A, which is where we would want it, we would expect it to go. But we get the D sharp in the melody, which completely changes the quality of the chord. It's no longer major, it's diminished. So considering the fact that the next cadence ends in A major, but the next sort of resolution we get is B going to E, I think we are thinking in E for the time being. And this A chord is actually just mode mixture. This is just a harmonization. This is just E melodic minor, because we have the C sharp and we have the G natural. If this were E major, we would have the G sharp, but we also have this descending bass line, the cross relations. Well, it's not really cross relations because it's not two voices. Maybe it is. I don't know. I always associated cross relations with, or false relations with, the conflicting accidentals happening across different voices, but I don't see why that needs to be the case. In this case, it's definitely conflicting. But here we have 1-6 going to 4-2. That's how I analyze it, because this sounds like it's preparing for something in E to me. And then 4-2 goes to F sharp, A, F sharp, and D sharp, which is 7-6. So this is a half cadence on a diminished chord. And the reason why it's a half cadence is because the 7 chord is functioning like a dominant, just like how we have a half cadence here. And it's also inverted as well. So then we have B, B, F sharp, and D sharp. That's just a root position 5 chord in the key of E. And then this G sharp and A are both non-chord tones. We can mark those. And then we go E, B, G sharp, and E. So we get an uppercase tonic, even though we have some mode mixture going on. We have a neighbor tone here in the alto. And before we go, I think because we're cadencing, this is an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of A. I think this is where we modulate, so we can call this now a 5 chord in the key of A. This E gets held over, E, E, G sharp, and B, so the chord doesn't change. We just get some passing tones in the bass and the alto. And then we get G sharp, E, B, and B, which is just taking the chord and inverting it, just in first inversion. And then we get a D natural, just like how we had in the second phrase, as opposed to D sharp. So we have F sharp, E, G sharp, and D, but I think this F sharp is an accented non-chord tone, and really this is E, E, G sharp, and D, which is an incomplete 7 chord, but enough context to tell us that it's a dominant chord, leading us to 1. And of course it's imperfect authentic because the C sharp is in the melody. So all in all, the chorale, even just for this, is very unusual, but we haven't even, this is just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. So the next cadence we have is in the key of E. Again, there's this ambiguity between E major and E minor. We cadence on E major, but this descending line, A, G natural, F sharp, and E, is undoubtedly in the key of E minor. We have 2 Gs, we have the D sharp. I think for all intents and purposes we're going to the key of E minor, and this A major chord is actually our 4 chord. And that 4 chord goes to B, A, D sharp, and F sharp, which we've seen before. This B7 over A, which is 5-4-2, so uppercase 4 going to 5-4-2. We see that mode mixture or harmonization of the melodic minor scale quite often with Bach, depending on how you look at it. And then we have G, E, G, and C sharp, which is interesting because we kind of expect a minor chord here, but this C sharp throws us for a loop. This C sharp turns the quality of the chord into diminished. This is a harmonization of the melodic minor scale. This would be a 6-6 chord, and then we get 4 passing tones, which indicates that something's happening passing chord wise, usually, not always, but most times, at least in my experience. We have D sharp, F sharp, F sharp, and A, which is a passing D sharp diminished chord in first inversion. So that is 7-6. And apologies, this is not 6-6, it's 6-6-4, and it's a little cramped. Apologies that the handwriting is a little difficult, but this is C sharp diminished over G. This is a passing 6-4, and then we go to E, G, B, and E, which is where we get our resolution to the E minor that we're expecting. And as we're getting ready for the cadence, we have B, F sharp, B, and E. Of course, this E being a 4-3 suspension over the bass, still implying a 5. We have this 7 here, and this G sharp around the A, very interesting. B, B, A, and D sharp. That's just an incomplete 5-7 chord before we cadence on E major. So we have some fluidity between E minor and E major. That's something that's typically more present in Bach's instrumental music than it is in his choral music, but it's super interesting to see mode mixture in such free mode mixture in Bach's writing. Very, very interesting. I'd say it's, I mean, this in the chorales so far is very unprecedented, so I'm excited to look forward more. So this next cadence is the first interesting one we have. We cadence, it looks like a half cadence in the key of A major, but I think it's an imperfect authentic cadence. Or sorry, I meant to say a half cadence. I meant to say a plagal cadence, sorry, not a half cadence, because we have A going to E here, and even though the fifth of the chord is here, it doesn't mean it's a half cadence. It sounds more like an imperfect authentic cadence, but I think there's an argument for both, but we'll talk about it when we get there. So for starters, you're going to see that this is continuing the idea of E, E/E, but we have a D natural in the melody, so what's that all about? Well, we have a D natural here, which makes me think that we are in the Mixolydian mode, and as we know, the Mixolydian mode, E Mixolydian is the same thing as the A major scale, just obviously E is our new tonic or final, depending on like whether you're using modal language or tonal language. But here we start off pretty straightforward, E, E, G sharp, and B, that's a tonic triad. Passing tone in the bass and alto, G sharp, E, B, and B, that's just taking the chord and inverting it. We have some neighbor tones going on in the alto and the bass as well. And then we have G sharp, E, B, and B, so it's still an inverted triad. And then it gets re-inverted on this beat here. We see that figuration, or at least that progression and how it manifests with somewhat regularity, or with some regularity rather, where we have 6 and it turns into 5/3 on a weak beat. And then we get A, E, A, and C sharp, which is a 4-chord in root position, neighbor tone in the bass, A, E, B, and B, which is interesting, but I think this A is an accent and non-chord tone, and really it's G sharp, E, B, and B, which is just a tonic triad in first inversion. We have F sharp, A, and D, and this is where it gets interesting because this G sharp I think is a passing tone, and this is a byproduct of the Mixolydian mode. This is D major over F sharp, which would be our 7/6, or 5 of 3, depending on where you would expect it to go. But because we're in E major, it's definitely a flat 7 chord. I don't even think 5 of 3 wouldn't make sense unless he pivoted to G major, which he would then probably lead to E minor. Or if he needed a device to get to G major from E major, which would be a significant leap across the circle of fifths, or around the circle of fifths. But then that goes to A, E, A, and C sharp, which is a 4 chord. So we're now going in the reverse direction of the cycle of falling fifths, 7 going to 4. This would be like a 4 going to 1 in the key of A major. And then we get A going up to E, E, A, and C sharp. That would be a 4/6/4 chord, which was kind of hinting towards the idea of a plagal cadence. However, if we look at this G sharp right here, and goes up to A again, but here we get D sharp, A, and C with the E in the bass. If we just look at this E as a pedal, what we see happening here is we have D sharp, F, A, and C sharp, which is a 7 chord, right? It's almost like a 7/7 chord if we look at it over the bass. I'll just put 7 though, because both chords, both notes don't ever. No, it is a 7 chord, or a 7 half diminished, which is what makes it sound imperfect authentic. Even though we have the E in the bass here, the chord that's happening as a result of the inner voices mixing with the melody implies a 7. So I put it in parentheses here because it is over a pedal, but it still resolves to 1, which makes this feel more authentic than plagal. But if you look at this all as just an embellishment of 4, then it has elements of a plagal cadence as well. But this next phrase, this is very, very unusual, an incredibly unusual phrase, and I have theories about what's going on here, but it's not by any means as secure of an analysis as what's going on here. But we have another sort of imperfect authentic or plagal cadence here. I still think it's imperfect authentic for the same sort of reason, but let's talk about it. So we have A, D sharp, F sharp, and B, which is our 5-4-2 chord. And for the sake of understanding what's going on chord-wise, I'm going to do a little bit of lead sheet analysis. So this is B7 over A. And then we would expect that to go to 1-6, right? G sharp, E, B, and B, which is E over G sharp. That's our 1-6 chord. And then here's where it gets interesting, and I'm going to ditch the Roman numerals for a few beats here just to outline the chord changes. So we have G, E sharp, B, and B. So this is a G sharp 7 chord. That's what it sounds like. Then we have F sharp, E, A sharp, and C. That's an F sharp 7 chord. And this right here, this chord has been tormenting my brain. This is a B diminished, or B minor 7 flat 5 over F. F, D, A, and B. If this were an F sharp, it'd make some sort of sense, but we have a very interesting B minor 7 flat 5, or B half diminished 7th, which then goes to E7, E, G sharp, and D. So that would be like an E7 chord. And then we have D sharp, F sharp, A, and C sharp, which would be D sharp, not fully diminished 7th, D sharp half diminished, before we go to A over E, A, and C sharp. And then we have some passing stuff going on here that we'll get to, and then we cadence on E. Do you like the lead sheet analysis? Would it help for me to write this above the chords? Let me know in the comment section and I could start doing that. It wouldn't take too much more time out of the video. But let's take a look at what's going on here. So if you listen to the chorale, very crunchy, very angular section. Definitely pretty much almost the upper limit of Bach's harmonic vocabulary. And it really is a byproduct of conflicting harmonic, chromatic ascending and descending scales. So I looked at chromatic ascending and descending scales. So here we have 5-4-2 to 1-6. And if we look at G sharp 7 and F sharp 7, this E sharp, I've seen this in a couple of different versions. There's a version that notates it as F. There's a version that notates it with E sharp, but the E sharp I think is the key here, because I think this E is now in the key of B minor 4-6. We've seen 4 as a pivot chord to a minor key in the past. And this G sharp 7 is actually an augmented 6 chord, right? Because the G natural is the flat 6 in the key of B minor, or in the key of B. This E sharp is the sharp 4. This is an Italian 6 chord, more specifically, an Italian augmented 6 in root position. And it's really the only context in which G sharp and F sharp coexist, unless we're like playing a blues, right? But yeah, so then we have F sharp, E, A sharp, and C sharp. That would be our 5-7 chord, right? Which also happens to be the augmented 6th in the key of A major, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that would be enharmonically equivalent to the augmented 6th in the key of... I'm going to put E and H underneath it because it's not spelled exactly the same, right? It would be... oh no, you know what? That's wrong. Apologies. That's wrong. That analysis does not make sense because it would be F natural, not F sharp. This is an F sharp, so an F sharp 7 would be 5, and this is how I thought I came across something when I was thinking about it as I was writing the tones, or as I was writing the lead sheet notation on top of it. But no, what I think ends up happening here is that we have a very deceptive progression. I think what we're expecting here is this B sharp half diminishes also over F, and this it's just in the lead sheet notation. So if we were in the key of B minor, we would expect a B minor chord here, but we get B diminished, and that's what makes it deceptive. So what I think actually happens here is we get like a direct modulation to A, at least for just a moment. And this is just mode mixture where we have 2 half diminished in second inversion, so 2, 4, 3. That goes to 5, which would be like Mixolydian. And then I know that it would be kind of weird to think about modulating back to the key of, this would be 5, 7, but in the key of E. Really what I think is happening, no, I don't think we've modulated back yet. We'll just keep that there. So this is like a 2, 5 in the key of A. And then we have D sharp, F sharp, A, and C. So that would be like 7, 7, or C sharp, not C. 7, 7 of 5. And then we get 5 in the bass, E, E, A, and C sharp, which would be 1, 6, 4. But it still sounds like E is our tonic here. Throughout this entire time, it still feels like E is our tonic. It doesn't really feel like we've modulated to A. It doesn't even really feel like we've modulated to B here. But in terms of contextualizing the chords and making sense of how they flow together, I think we have to compartmentalize the phrase into subsets of different keys because that's how the chords are moving and we're just getting some tonicization. So the bass goes where we expect. The chord resolves smoothly, but this 1, 6, 4 is actually 4, 6, 4 in the key of E. And in parentheses here, we still have the D sharp, the F sharp, and the C, which is a little bit of a 7, 7, even though we have the E in the bass. So there's that pedal before we get 1 again. This phrase right here is still sort of racking my brain. I don't know exactly what's going on here, but this is my best guess because we do expect the 5, 7 to go to some semblance of a B minor chord, and B diminished is similar to B minor in construction, but this descending F natural keeps this idea of like almost like E Phrygian in a way, like an E Phrygian dominant, but it's sort of like that chorale that we looked at recently where we had the spinning out of G going to F going to E flat before we got to B flat through like the spinning of minor keys. And this would sort of be like going to not A major, but A minor. So we have like B minor going to A minor that eventually then gets recontextualized as E major. So it's interesting. This is a super interesting phrase, maybe even the most interesting phrase we've looked at up until this point. I hope we encounter more music like this. So here we get G sharp, B, E, and E, which is E major over G sharp. That is just a first inversion tonic triad. And I think this is where we go to A major very briefly. We can call this 5, 6. Before we go to A, E, and C sharp, which is our tonic in root position. That's where we expect it to go. But this cadence right here is an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of F sharp minor. So I think instead of calling this 7 going to 3, this is 5 going to 1, and then an F sharp, this is our 3 chord. This is just what it sounds like to me. These brief visitations to A major have been a theme throughout the chorale. A only being visited for a little bit, A happening at the cadence and being the case a little bit into the phrase. It's been these short phrases modulating to a different key during their lifespan has been kind of the MO of the chorale. And then the chord gets turned into first inversion very briefly here on the and of 3 before we get D sharp, A, F sharp, and B, which is B major over D sharp. Another uppercase 4 chord, 4 major, and then we have some passing tones, hopefully to make this seem like the imperfect authentic cadence it is. And we have E sharp, G sharp, G sharp, and B, which is like an E sharp diminished chord in root position. So that passing 7 chord there before we go to 1 does feel like an authentic cadence because we have an authentic cadential formula, 4 going to 7 going to the 1, predominant, dominant, tonic. And because our last cadence is a perfect authentic cadence in the key of A, we can call this F sharp our submediant. We can call it 6. And then we get G sharp, E, B, and E again, which is a 5, 6 chord, E major over G sharp. We get A, E, A, and C sharp, which is our tonic in root position, A major. And then we get E, D, G sharp, and B, which is a big 5-7 chord with this neighbor tone in the tenor before we cadence on 1, A, C sharp, E, and A. And this chorale, this section right here is very, very fascinating. If you look at the chords and you see how they are related to one another, you see that Bach, really, if you try to figure out how the chords puzzle piece together, the only way that I could see the G, and I wrote G sharp 7, this is not G sharp 7, this is just G7. G7 and F sharp 7 only exist in one context, and even then it's a chromatic context, so not both of these chords don't exist in a diatonic scale in the tonal vocabulary, but Bach makes them fit, and so long as the voice leading is smooth, the chorale works. So all in all, super fascinating chorale. This phrase, there's a dissertation to be written about this phrase. Maybe I will do mine on that. But all in all, it's super fascinating. Definitely one to tuck into my back pocket. And I think I spent enough time really picking this chorale apart. But the mode mixture and the ambivalence of key and even the modality going on is very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. But I will leave you all on that note. Thank you so much for watching the video and continuing to support the channel. Super fascinating chorale. These pop up every once in a while. They're not all just functional harmony. We get some interesting deviations from the norm. And there are tons of videos to be made, so if you'd like to go on this journey with me, feel free to subscribe. I'm going to be making videos every single day until I exhaust all of Bach's published chorales, or at least all the ones that have been cataloged and can be sourced online. And that's about it. Thank you so much again for watching, and I hope you take care.